Adam, you good? Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Nashville MTA board meeting at the Tennessee Bankers Association. What a lovely room. It's good. I hope everybody is well. It's good. It's fall, I understand. How we went through a season and who knew? just like season went. So I'm going to call this meeting to order, and I'll do a quick roll call. Walter Searcy.
I'm here.
Mary Griffin.
Mary Griffin here.
Jessica Dolphin.
Present.
And I know Janet Miller was unable to be here today. So first on our agenda is the approval of the August 26, 2021 MTA board.
Move approval of the minutes.
I have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
And there's a second. Is there any discussion? Hearing no further discussion, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? You have minutes. Thank you very much. The minutes are approved. The next part of our agenda are public comments, and I only have one request for public comments at this time, and that is from Mr. John Bull. And Mr. Bull, you know about the 3-minute rule, right?
If he does, he's impossible.
I know, right?
I'll have to watch the 3 minutes. I'm a frequent rider. I live in northern Antioch, 370 Wallace Road. Frequent rider before COVID, 4 to 8 times a day then. Currently sheltering in place, central trips, double masking, and intend to have my 3rd Pfizer shot as soon as possible. Quick ticket, it's absolutely solid. I've been using it, I guess, 2 or 3 months now. Just works. One less card to carry. I use it on the phone. A user's tip, have a small Ziploc baggie handy to cover your touchscreen. That'll make for less creative punching in data when you're using your system. A couple other things, the bus stops at the Major League Stadium, which, at the fairgrounds, which is also State Highway 41A, Nolensville Pike. Route 52 goes right by. It has not been upgraded, and I understand that the stadium is not to open until May of next year. With crowds of 20 to 30,000, traffic could be really popped up one more level. I've contacted the chair of the Fairgrounds Board on this matter. I haven't heard back, but that's been recent. I realize, Route 21 comes in that way, but handling the crowd of 30,000 soccer fans is going to be interesting. But there we are. A brief word, I work with unhoused people on a volunteer basis. Took a gentleman to the rescue mission down 52, and the driver, a red-haired lady, was quite helpful in getting him on and off the bus, and that's sort of things really appreciated. We're all in this together. I'm looking forward to using WeGo Link. We'll get around to that as soon as I go to Southern Antioch, and I'm looking forward to the presentation on Quick Ticket. Thank you all for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Bull. Appreciate it very much. I do not have any other requests for public comments. Are there any other requests for public comments? Any other requests for public comments? Hearing none, that closes our public comments portion of our agenda. Thank you all. And next, Mr. Searcy, you have to be busy this afternoon, so I'm going to turn it over to you.
Okay. Is our comptroller in the house? And if she is, please come to the microphone. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Walter. On pages 7 through 9, we have the financials for the month of July. But since this is the first month of the new fiscal year, there aren't really any trends to report or particular information to highlight. So the only thing that I do want to mention is the payable and receivable agings that you see on the bottom of page 9. Included in these numbers are the intercompany transactions between MTA and RTA. And as of the month of July 31st, RTA owed MTA approximately $198,000 for the Southeast Corridor service, and MTA owed RTA approximately $17,000 for fares collected and tickets sold. So if you don't have any questions, that will conclude my report.
Do we have any questions from
I have no questions. Thank you, Shelley.
the group? All right. Next on our agenda, we have the resolution for the annual grant application.
Greetings.
Ms. Higgins.
In order to keep applying for funds, our CEO is required to annually certify that we comply with all the rules and the regulations that are tied to the funding sources. The board action item in your packets provides some detail on the reoccurring sources of revenue that we rely upon. The resolution, MA 21026 in your packet, gives staff the authority to continue applying for grant funds and assuring our funders of compliance with the regulations. Staff requests that the board adopt the grant resolution and authorize the submittal of grant applications and the execution of funding contracts and awards for the benefit of MTA. Any questions?
All right, apparently there are none. As a matter of fact, we want you to rush to get these grant applications done, I believe. I'm going to recommend to the board that we adopt this measure.
And that is a recommendation of the committee. It does not require a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye. And I am also excited. And Ms. Higgins, I just want to tell you that I truly like your scarf.
I like your style.
Sometimes we just gotta go. We go, right? Thank you very much. Sorry, Mr. Cersei.
No, that's all right. I was
had
slow.
to take that moment.
I was slow on that uptake.
That's okay.
Yes. All right. We have the procurement policy revisions. Ms. Herford is going to present those to us. Go forth.
Yes, I'm here to present two procurement updates. And this is my first time, so I'm a little nervous.
Well, welcome to the table. You're just doing just fine.
Okay. After a recent assessment, it consisted of comparing our procurement policies and procedures to other agencies to gain new ideas. And that's when staff recognized that the policy lacked a provision for unsolicited proposals and should contain additional language regarding protest procedures. By adding an unsolicited proposal policy, we're looking to gain innovative concepts. So the policy covers seven areas. I'm not going to go over them all, but I would like to elaborate on a couple of them, like the evaluation process. The evaluation process consists of two phases. Phase one is a conceptual evaluation process. If the proposal have merit, it will proceed to phase two. In phase two, the policy will further go on more assessment to determine benefits, cost impacts, and operational results. Having a policy in place will not circumvent the competitive bid process. WEGO is obligated or committed to full open competition. If the proposal is proprietary, then the agency will follow the established sole source procedures. Also, I would like to cover contract resulting from an unsolicited proposal, which consists of basically the agency is not required to act or enter into a contract based on an unsolicited proposal. The agency reserves the right to reject or return any unsolicited proposal at any time. The next update I would like to present is the protest procedures. The Director of Procurement is the point of contact for a protest. The Director will have up to 5 business days to respond. If the protester is not satisfied with the decision of the Director, the protester will have up to 5 business days to make an appeal to the CEO. The CEO or his designee will have up to 10 business days to make a final decision. FTA notification, that consists of if the project cost is over $500,000, then the agency will notify FTA regarding the protest. Both updates promote structure and guidance internally as well as externally. If the board approves, the procurement department will publish the unsolicited proposal on the website, letting our vendor community know that we welcome unsolicited proposals. At this time, do you guys have any questions?
Yes. Kim, tell us a little bit more about the sole source policy.
Okay. Yes, in our sole source policy, the agency is required to make sure that the proposal is proprietary, first of all. And then also what we do, we have to do an analysis. The using department will have to submit a justification regarding how and why it is a sole source procurement. We also require certain other authority levels, such as if it's $25,000, the senior staff will have to approve. If it's over $25,000, up to $150,000, the CEO will approve it. Over $150,000, the board is required to approve a sole source. And we also are required to publish our intent regarding a sole source.
Thank you. Ladies, any other questions?
That was very comprehensive.
Good, good. So staff recommends that the board approve both updates.
Without reservation, the committee recommends to the board that we approve the updates.
Okay.
I think Jessica's saying she agrees with you. Right?
Oh, okay.
Is that what you're saying?
I do agree. It was a great report. Thanks.
Thanks.
There being a recommendation from the staff and a recommendation from the committee, not requiring a second, is there any further discussion? There being no further discussion, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? No opposed? We're good. You were waiting for that opposed, right?
Can I just say really well done? Yeah. Really well done. I wouldn't have known if you hadn't told us that you were nervous. I think that was a wonderful presentation. Thank you.
All right. Mr. Rokos.
Yes, sir.
You are going to tell us about the ITB light duty spare parts bid. Is that correct?
Correct.
All right, well then, have at it.
All righty. So anyhow, as you all know, or maybe know, that we have 150 light duty vehicles that we operate in our fleet. Some are revenue, some are non-revenue support. So for many years, acquisition of parts were acquired by getting multiple bids, seeking the best price for a quality part. So to try to, how would you put it, better process, we decided to go to an invitation to bid for said parts. Now, the goal was to get a good quality part at a quality price. And what we did was we created specifications, put the parts out for bid. We put it out for bid on a national website called Transit Talent and our own website. And we also reached out to local vendors we already did business with. So do that. And what we did was we sent that out on June 15th and we got bids in, evaluated bids. We selected 3 different vendors And those 3 different vendors were Exoquip, who is a minority male-owned DBE, and there was My Parts Express, who is also a minority male-owned DBE, and then there was Tennessee Filter Sales. That's a non-DBE that we've been doing business with for several years. And with that, I'm going to ask you if there's any questions you may have.
Do we know the ethnicities of Jorge and Rick?
Pardon me, I didn't quite understand that.
Do we know the ethnicities of
I would have
Mr.
to
Sanabria
defer
and Mr. Dees?
John. Procurement, I would have to defer to John. I believe it's, no, I don't. I really don't know. John may know.
The 2 minority-based enterprises, one is a African-American male-based type of business, and the other one is Hispanic male-based type of business. These are the 2 DBEs that were successful in quoting the lowest bids out of the 3. The third one is an ongoing existing vendor of ours.
Thank you. Yeah.
Any other questions?
Well, what do you want us to do?
I'm going to ask you for permission to give the Chief Operating Officer or Chief Executive Officer the authority to execute the contracts with these 3 vendors. The 3 contracts won't exceed $2 million over the 5-year term. And with that said, yeah.
That's 2 million collective, not individually, right?
What's that?
That's
No,
2
yeah,
million
collectively,
Okay.
yeah.
The record was clear.
Hearing your recommendation, the committee adopts your recommendation and recommends to the board that we pass this request. Affirmatively pass the request. Yeah.
That being a recommendation from the staff as well as a recommendation from the committee, are there any comments, questions from anyone? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? I didn't let you get that in on the mic, did I, Mayor? I'm sorry, I was quick on that one. So there's no objections, the motion does carry. Thank you very much. I look forward to seeing how this works differently for you all and more efficiently, so thank you. Okay.
Point of clarification, was that 2 million over 5 years or 5 million over 5 years?
2 million over.
What is the not to exceed amount on that?
2 million.
2 million?
Yes.
Over a 5-year period? 2 million, right, over a 5-year period. Okay, thank you.
Okay, next up, we are favored with a presentation of our operations picture by none other than our Chief Operating Officer, Mr. Andy Burke.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, Board. On pages 27 through 31, you'll have the operations statistics for the month of July. A brief summary was provided in your packets to provide an overview of what those statistics were. One worthy note is this is the beginning of our fiscal year, and we do continue to see upward trends in our ridership year over year from 2020. However, we're still down about 41% compared to pre-COVID. Total ridership in 2019 was 773,928. However, due to these increases in ridership and direction toward I'll call a post-COVID norm, or what we're going to see as our new norm, we're starting to see our impacts related to our on-time performance as traffic congestion starts to ramp up. So if there are no questions, this will conclude my report.
Any queries? All right, we shall move on then to Comrade Roberts Turner.
Thank you for the reporting.
In combination with Comrade Burke, and talk about workforce planning update.
Actually, can we start with the operations dashboard reformulation discussion?
Oh, the dashboard. I was
Yep.
trying to get past that. But apparently you will not allow me. Yes, go right ahead.
All right, so one of the things, again, my name is Andy Burke, Chief Operating Officer. So this report is to provide a high-level overview of the health of our operation. And you may have noticed that this is something that we provide to you on a monthly basis. I'll tell you that in our industry, we are looking at hundreds, if not thousands, of data points that staff are looking at every day. So this report is intended to provide a clear and concise view from a high level, hitting on a variety of different areas of importance. So as we look at these, some data points in this report may come and go depending on what our focus points are going to be during the year. So for example, we may be deficient in an area that we may need to spend some time talking to you guys each month to kind of illustrate what's going on. And so therefore we would include it, and then there might be times where we might take things off. So let me kind of walk you through some of the areas that we have changed. And again, this is something I really like to be conversational. I want some feedback. If you guys are interested in certain areas, we can kind of talk about that. So I'm sorry to kind of have you guys back and forth here, rubbernecking here. So I kind of gave you guys a before and after. So as it relates to our ridership, we kind of condensed this down. Historically, we kind of broke this out with all the different stuff that's going on with access. And realistically, I think at this time of age, we want to kind of condense this down into like a one-page report so we can give a high-level overview of what's going on. So 2 separate systems, bus and access, is where we're going to be kind of hitting on. Moving on, we have productivity and efficiency. So, you know, not much has changed here except that we kind of removed the total number of scheduled revenue hours, but we're still including all the necessary points that are important for that.
Andy, can you tell me what's the difference in the safety pieces? What did you take away? I can't.
So I'm going. So in safety, we moved the information regarding miles between road calls, which are basically your mechanical breakdowns. We're going to have a maintenance section that's going to be kind of taking that on.
Okay.
And then we also took a look at our accidents, and instead of providing a number of accidents, we kind of want to come up with a consistent metric. So we're looking at like accidents per 100,000 miles, rather than just saying, hey, here's the total number of accidents. Because as we continue growing and expanding our service, we might have more vehicles on the road, we're doing more miles, so total accidents might not be a good reflection, because if we're doing more miles, we're going to have, I mean, hopefully not, but we'll see a variation in our accident trends. Well,
if I could share with you a little bit why we got to breaking the accidents out that much was we were having a lot, but it was such a number that we couldn't decide if we should be looking at safety, if we should be looking at different driving, or where actually it should have been looked at. And start finding out you might have had 10 accidents, but 5 was because a car drove by and knocked off a mirror. And so while we might feel very alarmed as board members that you had 10 accidents, it really was something different. So as you think about that, also think about how you're keeping us informed about what kind of accidents, how they're happening, so we don't sit in the place and make assumptions that we shouldn't.
Right,
and we think we have a driver safety issue when that's not what we have.
Yeah.
And I was going to say, if I could just jump in here for just a quick second to that point, Madam Chair. The great thing is our organization and this board, we now have the advantage of our senior safety program manager, Nick Oldham, who I believe you all met last month, and our system safety program that again has sort of been pushed on all agencies by the FTA, but the advances that we're making in that. And so I think we're in a really good position now to provide Andy's group with that detailed information and be able to bring some information back regularly to this board on those specific areas.
Yeah, it's just so you have that safety net for everybody. And if
and another couple of things, and kind of getting into the weeds for just a second here, like when it comes to accidents and preventability of those accidents, one thing that working with, you know, Rita, Nick Oldham and their groups on, okay, we're seeing a trend in this area, what are some of the actions and steps we're taking, whether it's safety campaigns, awareness weeks, and whatnot, to kind of address those safety issues.
Yeah, if I could just expand a bit, Madam Chair. First of all, with both the financial reports that Ed's group produces on a monthly basis and Andy's operating reports, we'll be doing more with the narrative that accompanies those reports to try to explain underlying trends, but kind of dovetailing on his comments. I'm always a big fan of what I'll call normalized statistics. 10 accidents a month. What does that mean if you're doing 100,000 miles, if you're doing 1 million miles, if you're doing 10 million miles? So with any fluctuations, and COVID was certainly a great example of that. You know, you can say, wow, accidents are way down. I don't know whether they are or they aren't. The normalized statistics help with that. And then amplifying Rita's point, you know, with the expanded efforts under our safety management systems plan, you'll be hearing from Nick in what I'll call a more formalized, and not just on, say, bus accidents, but the overall approach of the SMS plan and the execution of that plan, you know, starting in the very near future.
Awesome, thank you. More than anything, we just want to be your partner as we help you navigate everything.
And that's why I think this discussion is just important, because we want to make sure that we're being transparent so that way we can inform each other well. So kind of moving along, so service quality, again, a before and after. Again, some more consolidation. We removed some of the, one of the things that we did remove is access trip denials. And that is anytime somebody calls us and says, hey, I'm on a trip at such and such time, and we don't have that time available. That has historically been 0 because, you know, we don't want to have any ADA compliant related complaints. So we do everything we need to do to make sure that we're remaining in compliance there. So we're going to take that out, but instead we're going to be replacing that with kind of a on-time performance metric, or I'm sorry, with access trip completion, which is again kind of like we've been looking at bus trip completion. So making sure that any of our bus routes are making sure that we're not missing any stops. We want to be watching out for that for the access trip related stuff. And the other 2 items on this is...
If I can, Andy, just for a second, jump in on that real quick. This is one, frankly, that Andy brought to my attention. I'm like, oh, I'm not sure why I didn't notice that. Basically, if you call in for an access trip, because we have both our capacity and the overflow capacity, you're always going to get put on a trip. Next day comes, that day of service happens, a vehicle breaks down, something occurs to disrupt that trip may not happen. So I know I've been here 7 years, and that trip denial, so if that's 84 months in a row, trip denials have been 0. And there's no expectation that's going to change. So frankly, looking at that, unless there is a change, doesn't pose much of a, frankly, doesn't give you much information. But to Andy's point, the trip completion percentage, okay, how often is that? I know my good friend, Mr. Searcy, can speak to it directly as an experience that if something happens, vehicle breaks down, accident, whatever the cause might be that disrupts that trip, that's what's reflected in the new metric.
Yep. Thank you, Steve. And last 2 points on under maintenance, you'll see your bus percentages and van % fleet availability. And I'll be talking about this in a future presentation about what we're doing to kind of ramp up for service expansion, service readiness, and fleet availability. Not only is it's an important factor to be able to say, hey, this is how many routes we have, this is how many vehicles we have to do it. And so we want to be watching out for this. And so that's another recommendation. Moving along with our customer care, again, just for consolidation things, we took out the total calls received, and this can be kind of talked about in our narratives if there's any need for that. Again, just one of those metrics that we're looking at, one of the hundreds and thousands. The new sections that I do want to kind of bring some attention to, so staffing and customer amenities. These are, so under staffing, we want to be watching and taking a look at our operator positions as well as our maintenance positions that are currently filled. Again, going back to a future presentation coming up next is just how are we looking for service restoration for October, how we're looking for spring, and I think these are going to be key indicators of how we're performing. And then the others, the customer amenities, these are related to our stops with shelters and boardings at covered shelters. So some interesting facts here is, if you notice that out of all of our stops, which we have 1,590 stops and 236 shelters are covering those stops. So 16% Out of all of those different stops, our ridership, we're covering about 72%. So we want to be looking at improving stop amenities to directly improve access to transit and making sure that we're not utilizing excess resources and putting stops where they might not necessarily be any benefit. So we have objectives and balanced with our capital improvement plan. So 3 main areas of infrastructure investment are state of good repair, which is we're taking care of our existing facilities, including large facilities as well as shelters. Our expansion of on-street facilities such as new and expanded shelter sites, and then development of new facilities such as transit centers. Part of our capital improvement plans, we do have to balance infrastructure needs with other things in the agency, such as our vehicle state of good repair, safety, IT, and process improvement. So again, just kind of focusing, this is an area that I've heard historically was something that we were looking at, and I thought this would be a good thing to kind of talk about. So
on the customer amenities, if I could just understand it a little better, the percentage of stops with shelters, you have it at 16%.
Yep.
And then the percentage of boardings at covered status, is that of the route or?
So of total ridership for that month, 72% of that ridership for the entire month was boarded at a stop that had a shelter.
Oh, okay.
And
So
that
it's not one stop, it's
correct.
the stops that have shelters.
And I will mention, and this is something that if we need to break this out, we can, but that statistic is also including our central downtown area.
But that'll make a big difference.
Yes. And I
mean, that will like tell a whole different story.
What's that?
I mean, won't that tell a whole different story?
If
you separate it out.
Yeah.
It will, but it's so if I'm looking at this right, and I gotta just double check here. So percent of shelter excluding central is about 57%, including central is 72%. And I know that's not up here, but that's just information I have at my fingertips. So it is a big, it's a difference. But again, it's an area that we want to kind of look at and see, okay, do we want to put more resources in these areas, or how much more resources and how many more shelters do we want to start building for to cover how much more ridership?
I think to that point, if I can expand on a little bit, every year when we work on the capital investment plan and the capital budget, shelter and stop improvements are always one of those items that we cover. And we still have a backlog. I mean, there's still quite a few stops that need them. We've identified in the Metro Nashville Transportation Plan a total of 68 stops that meet our boarding requirements, which is on average about 25 boardings a day to take a look at a shelter. But as we catch that up, you'll come to a point of diminishing returns. You get a combination of stops that will have very few boardings. And then you also, and I know Trey's group can attest to this, we're pretty much over the days where we take a shelter and we bolt it to the sidewalk. You know, these are now pretty significant construction projects. In many cases, we need easements and real estate transactions. So some of the stops, for instance, on the Nolensville project, some of those locations are over $250,000 a piece. So you have to kind of start to do that metric of, you know, is this the best use of resources once you get to a certain point? So I think that's what in the metrics that Andy's reflecting is, you know, you may get to a point where if you say, okay, you know, to get to 72% of boardings undercover, we have to cover 16% of our stops. If you want to get to 80%, you're going to have to cover 90% of our stops, and you start, you know, frankly, as you're dealing with limited resources, saying, is that the best place to invest?
Well, it is not just the resources to build them, it's the resources to maintain them.
Correct.
You know? Yeah.
Yeah, and it's true whether it's our shelters, our transit centers, we do not want to build it if we can't maintain it. So I think that's a great point, Walter.
And I assume when you review all these, you'll also be looking at it through an equity lens of not always just numbers, but who's there and what their needs might be.
Yes, and that's again with our development team. They're looking at equity and all those different factors as it relates to where do we want to build these and who's it going to benefit. Okay.
Awesome.
So that's kind of the overview of what I think we're going to be looking towards. If there's any feedback or comments or questions, let me know.
And I think our approach here, Madam Chair, is we obviously want to have any input of things you'd like to see that aren't on there, things that are on there that you don't feel a need to see. So if there's any conversation this afternoon, we can make some amendments, but also the idea would be next month we'll come back with a quote draft of what this would look like in new format, you know, before we say, okay, this is what it is. And frankly, probably something we should revisit at least once a year as conditions change.
That's awesome, thank you. Anybody else have?
So question, while we're talking about shelters, how often would we replace shelters, for example?
That's a good question.
I can touch on, I think, Trey.
7 to 10 years is the replacement cycle.
7 to 10 years.
As part of our asset management plan, there's as Trey indicates, there's a trigger to take a look at 7 years. And frankly, the shelter and stop crew may assess that we can get another few years out of that one. Something else might suggest, nope, we got to do that one now. And then every now and then we have a wayward motorist who decides that we need to replace one early.
And then, actually, I still have more. So when I think about recruiting, you know, people to ride, et cetera, what metric would we want to start, you know, put together regarding safety so that we can talk about that? I think for some populations, the buses are safer than what perhaps some perception is. And maybe I might have missed that, but that would be something I think to work towards.
Okay.
Again, I don't know the detail. I'm not in the operations, but I think it can be really helpful because I rode the bus for 4 years, and you know, beyond spokespersons, you know, there were rare incidents. Everybody will always remember like the one where there was, you know, a shooting at the station downtown. That was one out of how long, right. And you know, and nobody was severely injured, et cetera. I'm just wondering how we could use some of the operational statistics to help people understand how safe it actually is to ride the bus. Thank you.
Yeah, I would go to a couple things from a board reporting perspective. Again, talking about what Nick's doing with our safety management systems plan. We do say on a quarterly basis, do a significant update. We can deep dive into it and actually break down. You know, when Andy's showing miles between accidents, the overwhelming majority of those accidents are relatively minor in nature, no injuries. You know, we refer to them as mirror taps. You know, it's a lane encroachment, mirror hits a truck. It's significant damage because those mirrors aren't cheap, but they're not what you would call, you know, major accidents, you know, versus what I'll call the higher, the more visible versions. And that's a lot of what Nick's focused on is basically the SMS plan approach is really a risk assessment approach, is, you know, look at frequency, severity, you know, what the chances are of that happening, and then how do you mitigate those risks. So I think as we kind of roll those presentations out, he's doing an awful lot of data collection, an awful lot of root cause analysis. He's implemented some innovative systems in terms of safety reporting, apps, you know, that all of our employees have access to, that you can get much deeper information on a specific topic. For me, an operations dashboard is just a way for you to quickly take a look and say, looks normal, what's going on here? You know, and again, our intent, I know Andy's intent would be in the narrative that accompanies this, quote, standard report. You know, he's looking for, and he alluded to it earlier, you know, if this is a one-page overview, you know, I'm maybe looking at 5 pages, he's maybe looking at 25 pages that you can kind of dig down in to say, oh, okay, here's what's going on. I mean, very often when I see anomalies in this report, I'll go to whatever department, Zita if it's customer care, Andy if it's operations, Nick if it's safety, and hey, what's going on here? And almost, I'd say 99.9% of the time, they have access to a data set that says, here's exactly what happened. 0.1% of the time, it's like, whoa, let's look into that.
Any other questions, comments?
All right.
Anything that you would like to see that you didn't, or I know I have a note stored 3 times, Gail, about expanding on the safety stuff in our SMS reporting. but anything other than that you might like to see.
I think we can all look at it, and if we see something,
Yes.
we can reach out. I think that's important.
Perfect.
So to Steve's point, we'll come back with a draft next month. We can look at it and see if there's anything that's kind of interest, or, hey, you know what, this doesn't really make sense. We can kind of talk about it then and go from there. Cool?
Well, have we satisfied your recommendation?
All right.
I'm asking you, have we satisfied?
I think so, yes. I think coming down to next month, we'll have a draft and you'll see all the different figures and we'll go from there.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Let's talk about workforce planning update.
Okay. All right, so again, good afternoon, everybody. So I'll just jump right into this one. So this one is, we want to focus on a couple of points, and this is kind of like a where we were, where we're going, and what's going on. So at the outset of the pandemic, we reduced service by almost 30%, as you guys all know, reflecting both sharply on our demand as well as our priority in protecting the health and welfare of our customers and employees. So as we worked with Nashville's Department of Public Health, we gained a better understanding of the virus and implemented protective measures that identified a couple dozens of our operators who had high health risk categories, and we allowed them to take paid leaves while we continued operating essential services. So during that time, it allowed us to implement a number of helper buses. So during this time, these buses were stationed strategically around the different systems that when something came up, we were able to insert a bus and say, hey, nobody's going to notice the difference of this bus versus this bus. There's a smooth transition. So this allowed us to capture any routes that might have been approaching capacity restrictions due to the social distancing during that time, as well as address any of those service disruptions. Also, we implemented a number of safety and health enhancements as we learned more about the COVID. And more recently, with the availability of effective vaccines, a lot of most employees have returned to work, providing us with a surplus of operators for the reduced service levels. So in April of this year, we just restored back to 90% of our pre-COVID conditions, pre-COVID level of ridership, pre-COVID routes. Now we're scheduled to return back to 100% come this October, and actually in a couple of weeks. And then to increase to a little bit above 107% of our pre-pandemic service levels in April of 2022. So why am I telling all you that? So right now in the country, there's a nationwide driver shortage, which I'm sure you guys may have heard or haven't heard, but wanted to kind of spend some time kind of letting you know what some of the other industries and agencies are doing. They're increasing wages, sign-on bonuses, but again, still struggling to recruit the right candidates to fill their needs. I'm trying to paint a picture because some transit agencies are even cutting service due to these driver shortages. In Massachusetts, Governor Baker had to call in the National Guard to help drive school buses. So at this point, the way I'm looking at this is whatever public transit agency is creatively thinking outside the box are the ones that are going to be able to deliver service. So I also want to point out that this isn't just CDLs, this is drivers, this is a lot of different industries are affected by this. So here's what our service requirements are looking like as we kind of work towards this. It's demonstrating a comparison of pandemic levels, our current conditions, versus our fall service changes and then our 2022 service changes. You'll notice during the pandemic, we were hitting about 100% of our needs for operator headcounts, vans, buses. But as you see in fall, we start to dip in our headcounts, in our vehicles, and then the real concern is coming spring, April of 2022. There's a lot of variance there. So I will say as of the most recent report, it shows us having 366 operators available to cover 397 routes. That's 92.2%. A few years ago, in the late 2018, early 2019 time, we had about 88%. They were cutting trips from the schedules to meet service demands, but we were able to, this was all mitigated in 2019 when we had to reduce service levels due to funding shortfalls. So what are we doing? So we need to be recruiting, training, retaining our current workforce. We need to ensure our fleet is safe, reliable, available for service needs, and we need to be measuring and tracking our performance based on the action plans that we're setting forward. Target for spring is several months away, but it'll be here rather quickly. So, I will say that we are thinking outside the box. We're working really diligently. A lot of items are going into this to address our operator headcounts. Items listed here are just a few things we're doing, and working towards recruiting the right candidates to serve our customers, as well as developing our current staff for future advancements in the organization. Operators coming in, getting promoted to dispatch, getting promoted to operations supervision, and getting into leadership roles to help us drive our business. One of the most recent objectives we're pushing is being led by our Director of Administration, Kim Tucker, introducing a paid training program for non-CDL and non-permit operator candidates. So if you're interested in coming to drive for us, you don't have your proper credentials, we'll pay you, we'll train you, we'll help you.
That means CDL.
To get you your CDLs, yep.
What'd you think, Walter?
Yeah. I think I can qualify.
There you go, there you go.
She'd be on the accident list.
I've seen Mary drive and Kim don't.
No, I'm off your list. I was writing for a reason.
Very good. So just a couple other things. I want to just, Rita and also the negotiating team with the local ATU finished negotiations for the collective bargaining agreement. This addressed a couple of different areas, such as our starting wages, our progression to top rates, and I think overall it provides a happier workforce. So I'm very happy and again, congratulations to the negotiations team. I'll jump over to our fleet availability and reliability. Not only are we focusing on our operator headcounts, but we want to ensure we're getting the right mechanics as well to ensure our fleet is safe and reliable when it's on the road. With this, we are emphasizing a need for mechanics. The last year, we have seen impacts related to supplier and inventory levels. So what we started doing with that, not only are some, again, talking about many different industries when it comes to parts and shortages. So we've adjusted our inventory levels to ensure that, hey, we expect this is going to be a delay of 3 weeks. Let's up our inventory to make sure that we have enough of those parts on stock, so we're not waiting in long-term deliveries. I'll move on to the next slide here. So again, measuring and tracking performance, as we kind of work through a lot of the different items that we're addressing to work on our operator headcounts, our fleet availability, and other different action items to get us ready for spring service, we need to be measuring, tracking, and adjusting our action plans by setting realistic goals and targets and making the necessary adjustments as we kind of move along. And again, working with staff to come up with good decisions to make these necessary improvements is what it's gonna take. So our staff track a lot of different things. We report to you a lot of these different things. Again, the hundreds and thousands of data points that we talked about.
Who's your biggest competitor for drivers?
When it comes to drivers, I wouldn't necessarily think it's just drivers. I think there's a lot of, there's people that are hanging up their licenses and saying, I'm done with this, I'm moving on to something else. So we're focusing on how do we retain those individuals? How do we, we're talking to our folks that have been here and saying, what do you guys like? What do we need to promote better on? A lot of different things that we're kind of touching on to get that healthier.
And how you do that without penalizing the younger staff.
Exactly, yep. And I think that was going down to in the union when it comes to the CBA, that starting wage and not having and some of the negotiations I've been a part of in the past is really heavily towards your senior individuals. And not to, I love our senior drivers, I love our senior operators. I just want to make sure that we are also getting the correct candidates and pool of talent to serve what we need to serve. And one thing I noticed is not only are we just looking after CDL operators, right? We want to expand that pool, which is why we introduced that permit training class so that we can hire bartenders, waitresses, individuals who are looking for a change, maybe in the customer service fields, that, you know what, I'm thinking of being a public servant. How do I do that?
If I could amplify a couple things, I think Andy hit the points really well, and I want to give Kim and her team a lot of credit with the new CDL approaches. We've seen historically in our industry as well, we recruit drivers, and I would contend if anybody's ever driven a bus, driving the bus is the least of the concerns. So historically in our industry, that means, well, if you want somebody with a CDL, you're going to hire a truck driver. And if you're a truck driver, typically the freight doesn't talk back. Right. Right. So frankly, a large reason for departure is, you know what, I'm just not cut out for this, you know, for this particular kind of freight, and then they'll move over into other trucking types of industries. So I think the approach that Kim's group has been taking in doing, you know, both taking folks who don't have the permit yet, who don't have the background, because the honest truth is in the training program, we'll figure out who can drive and who can't. Yeah. You know, we're obviously not going to put somebody behind the wheel who's unsafe. But the honest truth is it's a whole lot easier to teach someone to drive a large piece of equipment, maybe not Mary, but most people, it's much easier to teach them how to drive a large piece of equipment than it is on how to treat people with dignity and respect and diffuse difficult situations. And then the other is just on the quicker turnaround time on training. Historically, what we've done is say, okay, great, you have all the qualifications, you went and you got your permit, you went and you passed your test, you paid for all those things, great. Training starts in a month. Where I was telling Kim the story, I just happened to be sitting in a restaurant one night while my wife was out of town eating dinner, and I got offered a job to start the following morning in that restaurant. Totally unqualified, but I could have started the next day. So that was sort of what we were competing with. You know, and to that point, to her credit, to the credit of our training group, you know, they built up a relationship with our DMV so we can kind of expedite folks getting through that testing process. And I think Andy hit the point very well. He showed the slide earlier, literally on a lot of these national news feeds for public transportation, pretty much every day there's a news story about somebody who's really short drivers. And that's true whether it's transit, school bus for sure, you know, is really an issue. And I would contend if we're not more creative, if we don't do things differently than we've done them before, then we're just going to be another statistic on that chart. The maintenance effort, you know, he had it up there and touched on it a little bit, but incorporating what's called ASE certification, automotive service excellence, I think, what have you. But yeah, Carl, you would. I was close. I was almost there. Basically rewarding people with wage bumps for accomplishing higher levels of expertise, you know, and I want to give a shout out to Patrick Green and ATU 1235 for, you know, for basically thinking outside of the box on some of these types of issues.
Let me shift gears just for a brief second, because what you said earlier and what the presentation of Mr. Pocos calls to mind is the whole supply chain issue. And when we're talking about parts, backlogging parts and the like, do we have a supply chain issue now? And do you anticipate the likelihood of having one moving forward?
I think this is an area that we do need to really stay on top of. Based on some of the individuals I've talked to in the industry, it's a growing concern. You know, and one of the things, and I'll talk about the fleet, for example, our fleet plan when it comes to fleet procurement, the chip shortages. You know, that's where we're, as an agency, we're kind of coming back to the table and saying, okay, we need to look at our fleet plan and recognize this isn't a 12-month procurement, this is now an 18-month procurement. So we need to start strategizing that in our short-term, middle-term, and long-term planning assessments.
Yeah, and I'll actually be more direct because Andy's very professional and relatively new to the group, and I've been known to be a little bit more blunt, is it's absolutely an issue. It's an issue today. We should have 35 new buses on the property today that we don't have, which means Carl and his group and Andy have to figure out how to keep the old stuff running longer. It's not the bus manufacturer. 25 of those vehicles are access vans built on Ford chassis, and I'm told that somewhere in America, Ford has thousands of chassis sitting on a lot waiting to be turned into trucks, buses, whatever they might be, but they're missing these chips.
Yeah.
And without those chips, for better or worse, Done run.
Mr. Chips.
Yeah. Yeah.
Show me the chips. But as to Steve's point, yes, this is an area that we really need to stay on top of, so. But any other questions? But that concludes my presentation, so thank you.
And you'll get narrative on this periodically, because as you'll note from the prior report where Andy's showing % fleet available, % workforce available, % of authorized positions filled, you'll have a little bit of a snapshot when you see the report, and obviously in his monthly, verbal and written reports to you, you'll get a little bit more context to that.
Yeah. Well, one thing I can help you with providing an extra driver, but I can't do anything on the chip front.
Do the chips.
So.
Well, and I'm actually glad to hear you say that, Mr. Searcy, because again, as Steve mentioned and Andy as well, one of the things we're really doing is, exploring all avenues to attract people to our company, and not just to come to our company, but to stay to our company. And so we welcome any suggestions you all have about ways that we can, get the word out about the fact that we're hiring, and not just that we're hiring, but that we're an excellent company to come work for.
I would like to offer again, with new Americans and, folks, that may not know about the opportunities, I am very glad to help make some connections. And then the other piece, being a pension attorney, a lot of people don't really understand the value of the defined benefit pension that you have, and that, it is a unicorn now in the universe. And I get that can be a hard sell, to maybe to some 20-year-olds perhaps, or certain folks, but it's a great sell right now to many lateral folks and folks who realize, oh, my one health event can be, the end of your home and all of that. And again, I would be I'd be happy to help you all craft a message, and look at reaching out to different.
That's a great point. Great point. Yes.
Well, I'm glad to help.
Defines benefit pension. Where has it flown off to? Yeah. Okay. Well, we have followed your recommendation by having a detailed discussion on this matter. And we will now ask our Chief Administrative Officer to take us through the list of upcoming procurement projects.
I told Andy to remember to push the button and I forgot. But this is just our standing list of procurement projects that we have upcoming. You can see them there in your booklet. And we would just, again, always encourage you all to look seriously at it. If you have anyone you can recommend to us, we'd appreciate it. And again, don't take it lightly, what you can do for us. Amber's had some success with a couple of procurements in preparation for our North Nashville Transit Center that specifically came out of someone introducing us to a potential vendor, and that relationship looks like it's developing very well. So again, we would really encourage you to look at this list and keep us advised.
Check Derek Bell for real estate services. It's Rachel Bell's dad. Yeah. Mm.
Any other questions about the procurement list? Huh?
Looks good.
Seriously, you been working hard today.
Mm-hmm. Working hard.
Gave us lots of good food for thought as we look at the work we do.
Well,
so.
just like I said, if you put hand controls on these buses,
we
can recruit a whole nother army of available folks.
That is very interesting.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. I think I'm about to pass to the NICE committee.
That's awesome. Now, thank you, Mr. Searcy. Again, lots of good work today. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mary, you're on the NICE committee, aren't you?
Yeah.
Wouldn't you like to stand in for Ms. Miller today?
I'll be happy to do so.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, and that will turn us to the downtown traffic study MOU approval, and CEO Steve Bland, please, at page 37.
Thank you, and again, referring to page 37. You all know from our from the End Motion Strategic Service Plan, circulation through the downtown core is key to our being able to deliver service. And frankly, it's been an increasing challenge as traffic grows, as special event closures, what have you. In the meantime, I'm sure you've all read about other issues surrounding downtown circulation, transportainment vehicles, construction zones, valet lanes, you name it. So frankly, coming back to the time when Ms. DeMassimo started with the city and the mayor's office, we've had conversations about, what do we do about downtown? And under her leadership and under the leadership of the mayor, we've actually been able to put together a collaborative project, our downtown neighborhood traffic study, that is a partnership involving WeGo Public Transit, the National Department of Transportation, Nashville Downtown Partnership, and TDOT. And in fact, all 4 of those project partners are contributing funds toward the project. And the idea is to take a very holistic view of transportation, circulation in the downtown core within the right-of-way that the city of Nashville controls. As Faye and I talked about early on, it would be very simple for WeGo to say, here's where our transit priority corridor should be. Probably pretty simple for businesses to say, here's where valet lanes should be, here's where we should be able to load and unload goods. Probably very simple for our TNCs and our taxi companies to say, here where those loading zones should be. Problem is, we all want the same spot. So somehow that all has to be sorted out. So this scope was developed, and you all saw it when we talked about the capital plan when we were budgeting for these funds. And again, it is a collaborative project and one that's going to require a lot of cooperation and communication. So what this specific MOU does is the actual project will be under the leadership of the National Department of Transportation. In fact, the project manager on this project is here with us today, Marty Sewell from NDOT. And they've been a terrific partner really on a number of projects. So NDOT will take full project lead. They'll be responsible for the deliverable. They'll be the prime communicators. Obviously, we'll be providing data behind the scenes. The Downtown Partnership will. TDOT's heavily involved. TDOT's actually looking at this project to potentially be a model for other cities around the state. But the MOU would allow for MTA to be, quote, administrative lead. So allow for us to take on procurement activities, contracting activities, audit activities, some of the financial management expertise, in support of NDOT. This is similar in a number of ways, and actually probably a little bit less complex than the MOU we entered with then Nashville Department of Public Works on the Murfreesboro Pike Transit Signal Priority Project, where there were a lot of long-term issues. So essentially, if you've had the opportunity to look through the MOU, and we went back and forth with NDOT, Metro Legal, Margaret to take a look at it, and everybody's on board with what it stipulates. You get a specific outline of essentially who does what in this project, but the overall goal is for us to come up with a plan, a recommendation for a structured series of projects, activities, what have you, to try to make conditions better in that downtown core. Not just for public transportation, but frankly for all users in our downtown core. And as I say, even if you don't ever come downtown, the bus in Antioch is 20 minutes late because of something that happened downtown. So if you're anywhere in our network, this is going to be a super important project. And as I've said to folks in neighborhoods, I live in East Nashville. If I'm going to ride transit, the shortest way for me to get to the West End is through downtown Nashville. So even if your ultimate destination isn't downtown, very often those trips are connected through there. So that's the nature of the MOU. Certainly if you have any questions for us or for Marty, I'm sure he'd be happy to answer them, but we're just recommending that the board approve the MOU between ourselves and the Nashville Department of Transportation.
Upon its approval, what's the starting date?
It would be in effect as of the time that we sign it. We're actually in an active procurement right now. We received a couple of proposals for this that the evaluation committee is going through now. So we would certainly hope to complete some of the contracting activities over the next month or two, and then get started shortly thereafter. You know, and a lot of the upfront stuff, I'm sure, will be data collection. You can't do a good, I always joke about planners. Felix, where are you? Felix is very often the brunt, but you can't do a good planning process without good data, and that'll certainly be a big focus early on.
Any other thoughts, questions? I will say I have heard other people downtown being very excited about this, so I think the work for us and NDOT is going to be important work and valuable work for a lot of different people. So if I could have a motion for approval, that would be awesome. I have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
So we have a motion, a second. Any further discussion?
Can I just say I'm excited about it too, and I love seeing the collaboration between the MTA and NDOT, TDOT, and the Nashville Downtown Partnership. I hope it's a good sign of things to come.
That's great. So any further discussion? I have a motion and a second, so I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? There's no opposed. You do have a memorandum of understanding with NDOT, TDOT, Dippin' Dot. It's lots of dots. I'm sorry, we just need humor these days. Probably Dippin' Dots too, but they're quite tasty. No pressure to fix downtown, no pressure.
By the way, did I mention NDOT as the project lead?
I know, because I've just been looking that way.
Right. Well, I'm excited about this next topic. It's bus stop signage redesign updates, and Justin Cole will be giving this update.
Hi, Justin. We haven't seen you up front in a while.
In our system. So this project is part of our in-motion strategy, making service easier to use. We want to do that by providing better information to our customers at the bus stop. Now, for reference, this is what our current bus stop signs look like. The first thing I'd highlight here is that they don't provide a lot of information. They tell you that it is a bus stop, and they give you a phone number to call if you have a problem, but that's basically it. The second thing is, these are not in our brand. You see Nashville MTA there. The middle sign says BRT Light. That is not a name that we're using for service anymore, RTA. So with that, one of the top goals of this project is to update our signs to reflect the WeGo name and brand, particularly important for our marketing folks. Second, we want to provide better information to our customers. That includes the routes that serve each stop, where those routes will take you, information on how to pay for the bus, and stop ID, which is something I'll talk a little bit more about in a moment. And then lastly, we want to make sure our signs are more visible, both for our operators and for our customers. So this is the current design that we're working with. First thing, it's purple, that's good. Then you can see the large bus icon at the top of the sign. The entire sign will be reflective. All that's designed to make these more visible. Below that, you'll see the route information, where that route's taking you. And then on the bottom block, on the left-hand side, there's this QR code, which is designed to connect people directly to Quick Ticket. We're really excited about this because we know that for any new rider, figuring out how to pay for the bus can be one of the top anxiety points. So putting that information right on the sign. It'll also be really helpful for current riders. Of course, we're launching the Quick Ticket system now. We want to get people transitioned to Quick Ticket, so having that information right on the sign will be helpful. And then on the lower right-hand side, we've got basic information, including phone number, website, and then the stop ID, which is a unique identifier for every stop. And it's something that we use extensively in the management of all of our assets that are at stops, so including benches, shelters, et cetera. So it's something that will be very helpful for our internal, our transit stop maintenance crew, It's also something that'll be helpful for customers though, because it is a unique identifier for that stop. So if they need to call in and report an issue, they can use that stop ID to make sure that we have the right information. They can also use that stop ID to access next arrival information by calling our phone number and punching in that stop ID, and they'll get next arrivals if they don't have a transit app or that sort of thing. I want to talk a little bit about the size of the sign. So one of the things that became apparent very early on is that if we put more information on a sign that's the same size as our current signs, that wouldn't work out well. We actually put together mock-ups of a couple different versions of different size signs, put them in our garage, along with some surveys. Have gotten over 100 responses from folks in operations and admin staff on these signs. One of the top things was, the bigger the better. We heard about 60% preferred the largest sign. The other 40% tended to prefer the middle sign, and they tended to cite concerns that Steve mentioned earlier about mirror taps. The third one being a wider sign. And so that's definitely something we want to take into consideration, given that we do operate in some constrained environments. We've got narrow sidewalks. We're going to try and fit these signs on. So with that, one thing I do want to get to is that all the examples I've shown so far have shown just a single route on the sign. About 87% of our stops just have one route serving them. So that will be the majority of the signs that we'll be replacing. But for the other 13%, we have multiple routes serving the same stop. So we needed a design that would accommodate listing out all the routes that serve a given stop. And so this is what that looks like. You see, basically, we just have different height signs that we use for accommodating those additional routes. The other thing I want to draw your attention to is the use of color to signify service type. So we established these colors when we rebranded. So basically, anytime you see red on our system map, you know that that's a service that comes frequently. Anytime you see that light blue, that's an express route. And so on. So we're using that on the sign, again, reinforcing those service types by making the numbers on the sign the actual color of the service type. And so then another example of this is on branching routes. So in some places in our system, we have a route that will branch off into two different directions and serve two different destinations. So an example of that would be the 52 Nolensville Pike. That route offers frequent service between downtown and Harding Place. And at that point, it branches off. Some buses go south on Nolensville, others head east on Harding Place. And so you can see on the left there, that's how that's shown on our system map and in our route guides, with the red on the frequent part of the corridor and then the purple for the regular local service part of the route. And so we're mirroring that in the bus stop sign itself. We're using the red on the 52, and then we have both destinations listed with A and B shown in purple to reflect that those are local service types. Now, with all of this, I hope I'm starting to paint a picture of the fact that this is much more than just a signage project. Ultimately, this is about wayfinding in our system. And so to that extent, it relates to a lot of other things that we have. It relates to our printed materials, the GTFS, which is the data that we provide to app developers. So it dictates essentially what you see when you open up Transit app or Google Transit, the information that we provide on our buses. So with that, we're really also having some broader conversations about how we make sure that it's easy to navigate our system. So one of those things is looking at our destinations. A big part of this is including the destination on the bus stop sign. We want to make sure that the destination that appears on the sign is consistent with what appears in other places. So the basic idea here is when I'm at the stop, I look down at my transit app on my phone. I know that I need the Route 6 to Hermitage Station. I look up at the sign. I see that it says Route 6 to Hermitage Station, which tells me I'm waiting at the right stop. I'm not on the wrong side of the street. And then I look up down the street. I see the bus coming. The head sign on that bus says 6 to Hermitage Station, confirms I'm about to get on the right bus. Any difference in anywhere in there is gonna cause some confusion and make me question whether I'm getting on the right bus or going in the right direction. The other thing is the destinations need to be clear and concise. So we have limited real estate on these signs. And if we have a destination name that's too long, then we're going to have to start to shrink that text down, which is not going to make it legible for all users. So we want to make sure that we can be clear with our destinations, but also concise. You know, another question that we've been asking is should the destinations that appear on signs be, you know, specific places or more general neighborhood names? And we kind of have a mix right now. So some places we use a very specific, for instance, an intersection, or even a specific commercial location like a Walmart or a shopping mall, of that, something of that sort. In other places we use general names like Bellevue, a neighborhood, or Green Hills. So really trying to think through what is going to be the most intuitive for both current riders and future riders. And also trying to make sure that what we use is somewhat future-proof. We don't want to have to go out there and replace all the signs on a route because a mall closed or something like that. We're also looking at our route numbers. So I mentioned earlier how we use color to signify service type. And a question that we've been asking is, should we make any adjustments to our route numbering so that the route number actually also communicates service type? So this chart shows kind of our current routes, and you can see that right now it doesn't. So, you know, we've got some frequent routes that are in the single digits, some in the 20s, some in the 50s. So we've been talking through would it make sense to us to renumber them. And this kind of shows one example of what that could look like if we were to renumber it. So putting all of the frequent routes in the 50s, for instance, putting all of the connector routes in the 70s. So then when you learned that system, you would know that route number said something about the type of service. The disadvantage here, of course, is for any current riders, the number is the way that they identify the route primarily. So we're talking about a change that we've got to communicate to riders, and it could cause confusion. We also have to think about long-term. Our service will continue to change and evolve, and if we want to establish a system that's consistent, we have to be prepared to continue to maintain that. So when we add a route to our frequent network in the future, we will have to be prepared to change that number. So these are some of the things we're thinking about as we're working on this project. I'm going to go over some of our next steps at this point. I mentioned we've got those mock-ups. Our next step is going to be to put some of these signs out at actual bus stops across our system and kind of really test them out, see how they work in real life. Getting both operator and customer feedback. Then we'll make some adjustments and go ahead and start installing these on our highest ridership corridors. So we're looking at starting with the Route 56 Gallatin and the 55 Murfreesboro Pike, and then just moving on from there. Meanwhile, we'll be working to finalize our approach on the renumbering, whether we want to do that, and also you know, the approach for naming destinations. And then we'll continue to pursue next phases of installation, looking ahead to our spring service changes and beyond. We do anticipate that this project will take potentially 2 years for us to get all the signs changed out. As Andy mentioned before, we've got close to 1,600 bus stops across our system. And this is quite a complex deal because this is no longer grab a bus stop off the shelf and put it up on the street. We've got a unique bus stop sign for every stop in our system. And so we've got to be able to manage that. So we've got a team working on figuring out how we're going to manage all that data and set up processes for our transit stop group to be able to install these and maintain them. So that concludes my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions at this point.
I've got one question. Looking at the picture of the gentleman standing in front of the 3 signs, they're all at about the same height, but everyone's supposed to be able to reach the QR code, which is going to be great for you, but not so great for me. Yeah, and you all don't want me to drive, so how does that work?
Yeah, that's definitely something that we want to test out, and we want to make sure that folks will be able to scan that QR code. It's important that the sign is at a certain height to meet ADA concerns on the street. It's got to be at least 7 feet up in the air so people aren't hitting their heads on the signs. But yeah, it's definitely, we want to make sure, and so that's something we'll be testing in the pilot phase, is making sure that those QR codes work for people.
Thank you.
Mary, maybe we can install a ladder at each, on each
I'll just jump up and down. You guys can think about that.
The theory, and I talked to most of you individually, is everything, and I think Justin can attest to this, started out, oh, this is a really good project, should be pretty easy. I think we've probably had more heated arguments at the staff level over this issue than any other 10 items combined. So it's an interesting issue, you know, but it's super important. Again, one of the goals is to simplify the system, provide better information, you know, make it more consistent. But I also wouldn't underestimate, I mean, Walter made a great point when we were talking about the shelter metric, that we also have to count for maintenance. I mean, this is not a, you know, and Justin touched on it. Right now, if a sign gets run over by a car, crew grabs a sign off the shelf, goes out, puts in a new pole, bolts it on. You know, and here, in this situation, it'll be a custom production type of an activity. So there are those trade-offs.
And I would like to comment, you know, again, as a rider, people do feel pretty strongly about their bus number route. I want to say that because, you know, as a 24Xer, I fully expect when that bus comes back, it's going to be a 24X. We talked about getting baseball caps made, seriously, just for, you know, the Bellevue group. It is a way that the community bonds, you know, and so that's just, you know, another thought when people have bought in, and I know it is hard. We never did know why it was 24. I'm assuming it was the 24th route that was established.
Who knows? I don't know.
By Metro, but I do want to say that it is a serious consideration because the last thing you want to do is alienate riders, you know, that will come back, for example. So you have a hard task.
Your point couldn't be made better because actually when I was in Pittsburgh and we were doing a route renumbering, there happened to be a restaurant called the 61C Cafe along one of our routes. And when we went to renumber, they're like, we're going to sue you. You know, you're disrupting our business. So yeah, there is a lot of ownership to the history.
Yes, I see that point, but also to Justin's point about it being more conducive to longer term and expansion and that sort of thing, and numbering, a reason behind the numbering. So if I see a bus in the 50s, I know it's a frequent bus, right? So I can see the benefit, but the disruption also that it would cause. I don't envy your position trying to, you know, come down on one side of that.
Well, they're going to come after you guys too, so we're all in this together.
I did want to ask, have you polled the riders about the potential change in numbers?
We've not polled anyone about the numbering change, but yeah, we've discussed potentially doing some outreach, maybe focus groups, something like that, to try and get a feel for whether that would make sense to do the numbering.
The other opportunities is when you do a major route restructuring, because it gets confusing if you're not really making any change to the service, but you change because people get very panicky about what are you doing, you know, but if you end up doing a major restructure where it's a new route, there's something toward moving to that. It actually just came up when I was thinking about Mary's comment on the QR codes. One of the things I've seen, you know, to some extent in transit, but in other applications, is the QR code could very well be a very tiny thing that's put, you know, lower down on the pole that isn't specifically mounted on the sign. So that might be something else that we need to look at.
Yeah, I would say I agree with Mary. You know, I still remember the bus routes and the bus names that I rode on as a kid. So, and I don't think, it'd be interesting to see if riders know what frequent versus the other, you know, titles we give. So, good job.
Thank you.
Maybe selfie sticks, Mary, would that work, do you think?
I'm going to give you some suggestions after the meetings too. I don't believe we needed to vote on a recommendation. Okay.
No votes on
there are no recommendations at this moment.
We just have one last.
Right. We now have quick ticket, which is also exciting and many people are waiting for, from Brian Williams.
All right, everyone, good afternoon. I'm Brian Williams, the Performance Oversight Manager here at WeGo Public Transit. I'm going to give you a quick overview of the next generation fare collection system that we've branded as Quick Ticket. Quick Ticket is an account-based system. Essentially, you're able to get a reloadable card or mobile application that links to this transit app, this transit account that you load funds or stored passes on it. And the system itself will know what to use based on what service you ride, be it local bus service, one of the RTA bus routes, or the train service. The system itself will also know if you do or do not have enough funds or the correct passes. So there isn't any instances of, well, I have this reloadable quick ticket, but I don't have any funds on it, and it's gonna go ahead and charge. It knows if you have the money or not. So using quick ticket is simple as 1, 2, 3. First, you create an account. Next, you validate your email by clicking a link to you sent by Quick Ticket by WeGo. Last, you'll create a virtual card or link a reloadable quick ticket to your account. After this, you're ready to start loading valued passes and start using your transit account, creating a seamless ride between all WeGo services. Here's an example of someone, well, me helping someone check their mobile application on one of our buses. It wasn't working when he first tried it, but he just wasn't scanning in the right spot. Here's a look at the Quick Ticket website. Let's take a walk and look at the process of someone registering an account and linking their card. So going to quicktickettn.com, a person simply has to put in their email address, first, last name, select a password. We do ask for a few security questions. That's in case you need to reach out to customer care for any assistance. Customer care can validate that person's identity based on those security questions, so they can access and manage the account for them. After doing that, they'll get an email, comes out pretty quick, and they'll click that link. That link will take them back to the website where they can click a link to go back and log into their account that they just created. Once they log into their account they created, they'll be able to add their reloadable quick ticket, giving it whatever nickname that they want, and if they choose to change it later on, they definitely can. There's a security code and a card number on the back of the reloadable quick ticket. They'll add that, and then they're good to go. All that, even though it didn't seem like it, took 2 minutes to the second. That's how quick it is to create an account online and link a quick ticket card. I will add that customers are not required to do this. What if I don't have access to the internet, or what if I don't have an email address? That's okay. They can reach out to customer care. They can add their first, last name to their card as cardholder details, kind of like your debit card. You got your first and last name on your debit card, but you might not have internet access, and that's okay. What that allows is if Brian loses his card, I can go to customer care and I can get a replacement card, and they can transfer any funds or passes onto my new account for me. Unlike our magnetic tickets, if you lose it, it's just gone. Also on the Quick Ticket website, a person can add passes, as I mentioned earlier, or what we call stored value for paying for trips when they tap or scan their phone. They can do this by using their credit or debit card online. That credit and debit card is secured. Essentially, like when you purchase something on Amazon, they'll get taken to a third-party website and they'll put their information in, and a token is created. That token is a random, unique set of numbers and characters that essentially links the information to that card that they're using. So we don't store any of this information at all. We don't see any card numbers, can't see any card numbers, but we know if the transaction will be successful. Similar again to you paying a bill online or buying something on Amazon. Now let's talk about pay-as-you-go. This has been talked about in the past as fare capping. I think the last time we discussed this with this board was February 2020. We talked about day fare capping. So let's look at it in works. So this is a concept where a customer will only pay for what they truly need rather than making a choice beforehand regarding purchasing a day pass. When a rider's board a WeGo local route and scan their mobile barcode or taps their reloadable quick ticket, the system will charge them $2, activating a 2-hour pass instead of a 1 ride. The potential revenue loss was included in our fiscal 21 to 22 budget, so it was included in that. But let's take a comparison looking at what happens if somebody's using a fare box versus the quick ticket system. So at 10 a.m., I board a WeGo bus. I put $2 into the fare box. I ask for a transfer to one other bus. 10 a.m., somebody else with quick ticket taps their card or scans their phone. $2 is pulled off their stored value account on their transit account that they created. 11 o'clock comes around. Farebox person gets back on the bus, gives their transfer up. They got their free ride. 11 a.m. quick ticket, same thing, but I'm within 2 hours. Remember, I got a 2-hour pass, so I don't have to pay either. 2 o'clock comes around, person paying on the farebox, they put in another $2, but they forgot to ask for a transfer. They thought they were done riding for the day. Quick ticket person, 2 o'clock, they pay $2 too. 5 o'clock, that person paying on the farebox is paying another $2. But with daily pay as you go, the quick ticket person earned an all-day pass. So they don't have to pay anything at all anymore for the rest of that service day. So the person using the farebox end up paying a total of $6. The quick ticket person only paid $4. They won't pay any more for that day. And they didn't have to think about, do I need to buy a day pass? They just tap and go. Oh, didn't mean to go that far. We're back. This improves everyone's ability to access passes before they may not have been able to purchase them in advance. In the coming months, we'll be presenting a Title VI analysis completed on monthly pay-as-you-go, requesting approval to deploy another amazing benefit to our customers. Continuing towards the goal of equitable, fair payment options, given the ability to take advantage of a monthly pass without having to pay $65 up front. At a high level, how you saw that this person didn't pay more than $4, that $4 would go towards the count of that $65 in that calendar month. So every time that person rides, day 1, $4. Day 2, $8 going towards that $65. So they don't have to come out of pocket for that $65 at the beginning of the month. They might not need it. Let's talk about retail locations. In order to ensure Quick Ticket is accessible for everyone, we've partnered with a retail distribution network, Interim. This will place the ability to purchase a new reloadable Quick Ticket or reload value within a short distance from wherever you are. Under our previous system, the only place you could purchase a magnetic ticket was WeGo Central. Interim will place Quick Ticket in locations such as Walgreens, Family Dollars, MAPCO, and many other places in Middle Tennessee. As you see here, the purple dots represent places that will position us for a person to be able to buy a new Quick Ticket or reload value. The red dots, they'll be able to reload value. If you wanted to get a magnetic ticket right now today, the only place you can walk away with it outside of on the bus is WeGo Central. Once this retail network is launched and validated, there'll be over 100 different locations that a person can access transit benefits before they board the bus. And that's not even talking about if I have a mobile app. Let's talk about current adoption. And I have to make note that we are in beta testing. We've been in beta testing since November. This information I'm going to share with you is without any marketing efforts whatsoever. Currently, we're holding a positive trend of new Quick Ticket accounts created. At the end of July, we were at over 3,000 accounts. Now, if we compare rides complete with Quick Ticket to those using our current fare boxes, we continue to see an increase in usage with Quick Ticket. We're just about over 14% of WeGo local rides being completed using Quick Ticket by WeGo app in a reloadable card in July. That's about 2,000 rides per day on Quick Ticket. But where are we today? Recently, we completed a comprehensive test of the Quick Ticket system. We provided the system developer in it with a list of remaining items to complete before an official launch of the system will occur. With the ticket vending machines, you see a depiction of it here behind me. We're working with members of the ADA community to close any gaps that may make use of the machine difficult. We want to ensure that the screen flows make sense and issues like ticket jams are a thing of the past. The retail network that I just mentioned to you, WeGo staff, we're looking at a plan to develop to regularly audit locations to ensure that there's consistent availability of the reloadable Quick Ticket in each location. While we face challenges with the new distribution method, we are working with the vendor to ensure that everything is on the up and up. We Go Ride partners, known in the past as Easy Ride, we'll begin to migrate those over to the quick ticket system over the next year. I'm working with marketing to develop a plan to start pulling those companies in to put more quick tickets in the hands of their customers, even community services that we serve. For instance, we have a cold weather program. We're working on getting quick ticket in their hands this October. For our marketing efforts, once the system's confirmed as ready, we'll use every communication channel available, from social media to old-fashioned signs throughout the street, as well as through partnerships with local businesses. The integration between Access and Quick Ticket is currently undergoing testing. We're starting that in the next coming weeks. Essentially, with Access, a rider will link their transit account to their Access account. Once they load stored value or Access trips to their account, when they call to book a trip with customer care, their account will be charged. If, when the driver pulls up, they'll see that the ride's been paid for, so they'll be able to board quicker and move on faster. If there's any cancellation or we don't complete the trip for whatever reason, we'll credit that money back to the customer's account. We want to do our part in putting Quick Ticket in the hands of every Nashvilleian. If anyone knows of a facility or a facility that provides services to our seniors or disabled community, please send us their contact information, and we'll work to make it happen. I will add, we are on the tail end of our testing phase of Quick Ticket, and we hope to have this system completed and ready to launch early next year. And with that, it concludes my update. If there are any questions, I'm happy to take them.
Brian, that was a wonderful presentation, and they're just a clarifying, actually, how does that work if it's an agency? You described the setting up the individual account, or can somebody, if they wanted to, you know, gift somebody money for their account, how does that work? And I know you don't have to go into the details, but
I'll try to be brief to answer it, because if you can't tell, I'm really excited about Quick Ticket. I love Quick Ticket. It's amazing. Essentially,
almost as much as John Bull does.
Exactly. So say, Mary, you want to give some stored value to someone. If they already have a reloadable card, you simply need the card number on the back of the card. It starts with 615, and there's a security code. If it's someone who has children and they want to manage their transit benefits, think of it like a cell phone. You have an online account, you link those cards to that account, and you can add stored value and passes to those different accounts. When it comes to We Go Ride partners, I didn't bring that out here because, as I said, we're still testing that portion of it. They'll have an online portal as well for that company. So Brian's Pizza Shop gives benefits to his employees. He'll order cars from WeGo, he'll get those cars from WeGo, and he can assign individuals to each of those cars and provide those transit benefits. We're working on an upgrade to that system to make it pretty seamless, where if someone works for me, I can literally hand them a card and say, here's your Quick Ticket and a confirmation number. Use this, and as soon as that person puts in the information, they have access to the transit benefits. Thank you.
Brian, actually, Mary's question raised a question for me. So I get the part where if I want to, you know, Jessica's my sister and I want to put money on her account, you know, I have access to her account number. So would there also be a capacity for people to buy like WeGo gift cards that, you know, essentially I could just give you $50 that can be applied toward
Thinking about that, there is a method that may work. If I wanted to, I know you mentioned John, I've talked to John a few times. He gives passes out to people in the community. There is another Quick Ticket that I didn't mention in this. It's a non-reloadable Quick Ticket. It's intended for single use. So every pass that we have, from 2-hour to monthly passes available on that, a person can buy those and distribute those to anyone they choose. Those would be at the regular dot rate. To anyone that qualifies for a discount, they get the cheaper price with the Quick Ticket, and they will get that personalized Quick Ticket that they would need to use.
This is very, very exciting. And you're doing a wonderful job, and thank you very much. I think that there's so many possibilities for this program, and you're doing so much already in beta. That's just incredibly exciting. Thank you. I have no others.
Thank you.
That's great. Can't wait. to go back out and ride again. And Brian, what bus did you ride on in Detroit?
What bus did I ride on in Detroit?
Yeah, what bus? So he'll remember a bus route because he's from Detroit. That's how we did.
My mother used to be a bus driver.
I know.
So Cashew bus, East Warren bus, those were my routes.
Yeah, I did Claremont, Dexter, and Linwood. And Woodward.
I'm calling the DDOT director and say if they change the numbers, we got trouble.
Numbers, right?
Are there any other questions for me about Quick Ticket?
No, it's awesome.
Awesome. Well, I am here. If you have any questions, by all means, if you call customer care, I'm always down there.
Brian, I do have a question. Could I double tap my Quick Ticket when I get on if I'm with a friend and I want to pay for their ride too? Good question. The way we have designed this system, every individual needs their own card. That way, when Justin and the planning team works to plan service, we know truly that 500 people have accounts and they rode our services and where they rode. Versus if you had one account that you were able to use for multiple people, we would just see your one account and that you had 5 rides here. If that makes sense. Awesome, thank you. And then can I follow up to the gift card situation? If Steve, because I'm his awesome sister, gives me
my much younger sister, by the way.
gives me like a month pass for Christmas or whatever, can I put that to my account that I've already created if I already have one?
If Steve gives you a non-reloadable ticket, you could not on your own transfer that over to your reloadable account. However, I like to brainstorm and I see that as something for me to try to solve now. So thanks, Steve.
As much as I preach no surprises during meetings, I'm the one who did it. So I'm sorry, Brian.
You know, I love a good challenge, so let's see what I can do. Thank you.
Great job.
I'm excited about Quick Ticket too. Yeah.
I remember when we tried charge cards one time. Remember this, Margaret? That didn't work. But,
yeah, actually, I mentioned to Brian that he might want to talk some about our PCI compliance and how that worked for that. I knew Gail would remember that.
I do remember that, and just never got the revenue. We got the swipe.
It was a swipe, all right.
It was a swipe. But, yeah.
Madam Chair, that concludes our report.
Well, what a great report. Mary Nice did a nice job today. And again, it's just been an afternoon full of so much innovation and creativity on behalf of everybody. So awesome. Steve?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll try to make this brief. I know we've kept you long and took you through a whole bunch of topics. So very briefly, I do want to highlight with all the innovation, and the one I really want to highlight that I'm super pleased about was the one that Carl and John reported on in terms of our acquisition of the small bus parts or the small vehicle parts. First of all, innovation on Carl's part to identify this isn't a super efficient way to go about doing things, that we go call and get quotes every time we need a water pump or an alternator. And then I continue to be amazed by Amber and John and everybody in procurement on expanding the net into our vendor pools and particularly focusing on business diversity. We originally set a DBE goal on bus parts of 2% because historically those vendors just aren't available. And the 2% comes from, hey, okay, we can't find a vendor, but maybe they can get a trucking company to deliver the parts. So the fact that by expanding that net, now we're up into the 60% range. Again, Carl, John, Amber, everybody associated with procurement, I continue to be dazzled by, and it's just, can you top this next month would be, I guess, my comment. Updated a lot of you individually with respect to our planned board planning workshop. COVID strikes again. Our wonderful facilitator, Doug Eady, was unfortunately got ill. Talked to Doug yesterday. He's doing much better. He's doing great, recovering. So I'll be talking to him in a couple weeks to figure out how we get it back on track. Bit of a delay, but I know we were all kind of wondering a little bit about how's this going to work, under our current circumstances anyway. So that continues to move forward. We are talking, speaking of COVID again, seeing somewhat of an uptick in cases, as you might expect, some with our employees testing positive, but others where they have to isolate because of children or what have you that have it. And I know that Rita and Ed and Andy and the gang are working with Patrick Green and ATU 1235 on sort of reinvigorating our MOUs with the union on how we handle that. So I'm looking forward to a collaborative process there. Construction continues. Any of you in the Green Hills area on the Hillsborough Transit Center, it's starting to actually look like a transit center. Most of the structural steel is up. A lot of things are going on at that site, and we are on target to be complete by the end of the year. I'll say with substantial completion, coming back to the issues that Andy reported on with our supply chain. We're obviously running into some of those same issues on construction, but it should be an operable transit center by then. North Nashville Transit Center design work continues at a very good pace. We should be within the next week or so be able to produce for you an interim public engagement report that our friends at Dugard Communications have put together based on a lot of the activities that have been going on. Really kind of show a very expansive involvement in that neighborhood and some really good feedback toward the design of the center and particularly incorporating some of the neighborhood character into that final product. Appreciate the agreement of our chair to participate in leading a community advisory committee. We've had great response, about 15 folks from all sorts of walks of life up in the neighborhood, religious community, educational institutions, elected officials, you name it, who will help guide, you know, some of that localized programming. So that continues to run very well. We are collaborating on the quick ticket front on the issues that came up. We're collaborating with the American Muslim Advisory Council to help provide bus passes. Nashville will be hosting 300 of the Afghan refugees, so we're happy to collaborate with that group, really very much an interdenominational group, to help those folks settle into the Nashville area, and obviously transportation is a key element of that. With respect to the capital funding we received in the spring, from Metro, $1.5 million toward bus shelter sites. Andy reported on bus shelters. Justin talked about bus shelters. We have identified 18 sites for that $1.5 million to date. 2 of the sites have been completed. 2 are set for installation in the next couple weeks. 6 are in design and 8 are being scoped internally. And we are collaborating with NDOT. I think maybe Marty took off for greener pastures. But we are collaborating with NDOT on trying to do some collaborative projects in that regard. Also, with respect to North Nashville, very pleased. I want to thank Greater Nashville Regional Council. We were alerted last week that we are being awarded an $873,800 grant under the Federal Coronavirus Response and Relief Supplemental Appropriations Act that works through GNRC to support pedestrian improvements around the North Nashville station. So that for us is a very key thing, and we'll be collaborating with NDOT on that project. RTA side, very quickly, we are operating the Titans Express on the WeGo Star for all of our Titans fans, and the Titans again are generously underwriting that service. We're charging fare, but they're essentially holding us whole. After watching week 1, I was a little concerned because ridership on that train tends to run directly in correlation with the success of the team. But fortunately, last week it bodes well for what we might sell in the coming weeks. So that's going on. Collaborating with the city of Murfreesboro on a park and ride project adjacent to their pending transit center facility. And I think Hannah's in the room. Hannah is working diligently on our environmental documentation associated with that project. So it'll be really a kind of a key asset for us as we start to restore RTA commuter services. And finally, we are going to be resurfacing. We would have already resurfaced and restriped the Star Station lots at Donaldson and Hermitage. The nonstop rain over the last week or so kind of put a damper on those efforts, but sunshine ahead, right, Trey? So we should be underway with those projects imminently. And Madam Chair, unless there are any questions, that concludes my report.
Well, that was great. Any questions for Steve? Okay, well, what a great report as usual. Thank you, Steve. I don't have much in the report other than, again, thank you for your hard work. I know we still live in interesting times and you all continue to shine. And I am very impressed by everybody's creativity and innovation today. It's just so much going on in spite of, and y'all just continue to rise, and I continue to be proud, and I know I can say that about my fellow board members. So thank you all for everything. appreciate it. Monica, thank you for finding us this nice place. I appreciate it. Thanks. That concludes, unless somebody has something else, I'll move for adjournment. We are adjourned.
This has been a service of the Metro Nashville Network. If you would like to see this presentation again, or for more information about this and other programs, visit nashville.gov.